I learned from people.
Houses for school teachers.
Certain
Yeah.
people could fix everything.
Who you gonna talk to?
Yeah, I'll talk to him.
Okay,
I'm not the final answer, but I would love to pick at what he,
Small period of time.
because he said he could build a house for what they pay
I
rent.
tell kids that have bad land, I said he didn't learn it overnight. Teacher get mad at me, I said he's not.
Yeah, that's what has to be done. I'd be interested to know what his plan is to do it.
And you wanna know what size house it is.
Yeah. We know they're gonna be starter houses. We understand that. It's tough. I mean, it's real tough. We've been talking to a lot of developers and folks trying to get it done. And we've got some school board land. So if we provide the land, if we on school board
You
side,
might have bigger Big Bright right now.
or even if the county did,
You might have bigger Big Bright right now.
Bigger building in town.
and
Like a school teacher city up there.
hey bud. Hello. Hello. Yeah. It is time. Is everyone ready to begin? Are we missing anyone like the EDC? There he is there. Hey, Mr. Keller. Good to see you. We're ready? I think I hear Commissioner Turner coming. Hey, Commissioner Turner.
Sunglasses.
He's walking around taking what he needs. Everyone ready to begin the workshop? We will call the workshop to order. This workshop is for the purpose of the revision of the ad valorem tax abatement policy and procedures. We have a write-up that was presented by County Administrator Chapman, Mr. Kettler from the EDC, and Mr. Lapp. Anything y'all would like to kick it off with?
I'll go ahead and take first stab for the forum, and then between the three of us, whether it's Mo, Larry, or Curly, just pick one.
Yeah, he's curly. We get that. Yeah.
Well, primarily, this is a follow-up item to a board directive that was given to staff circa February of 2015. Due to a variety of different variables, we haven't been able to get it accomplished until now. We went through the process of the last, I'd say, 6 months or so of going back through red line after red line, trying to make sense of the current policy and then to develop a rubric, if you will, to allow us a very scientific method of validating projects that are coming before you to seek out the lower tax abatement. That was also consistent with the Florida Constitution, Florida statutes, as well as our ordinance. I'm not going to go through this ad nauseum as far as the write-up has been concerned, unless the board wishes me to do so. There's several things that we did improve that we feel made the process stronger, clarified some roles, added the rubric, like I mentioned, with quantifying points based on the merits of the project, as well as the background information and the vetting. Do need to make mention, though, that once we have the discussion on this particular policy and entertaining questions that the board might have, is that the ordinance, help me out with the right language, but the authority for us to be able to levy or to offer the abatements for ad valorem expires in January of 2018. And we need to take this back before the electorate of Hendry County to reauthorize it, and it would be the decision of the board of whether or not we do that by special referendum, which would be fully upon our expenses to hold, or whether we wait until August with the primary election and run it on the same ballot. One is much less expensive than the other. Just depends on what is the will of the board. The delta there would be is that we would have an 8-month window where we would not be able to levy a ad valorem tax abatement from January to August should you wait for the primary. election, pick a date, we want to work with supervisor of election and incur all those expenses. With that, I yield to my colleagues. I know, Brett, do you want to take a stab at kind of walking through what your perspective is of your amendments? And
Sure. Yes, please.
If you don't mind, for the sake of the sound, just to explain kind of what we did, what you see as being an advantage and a disadvantage, and then Mark and I will weigh in from the various county perspectives.
Thank you, Charles. I'm assuming you've all had the chance to read this at length. It is not an easy read. It's not a fun read, but at the same time, I look at it and I've had to spend many hours with Attorney Lapp and Mr. Chapman. I think the two things that are most important are, I think we, and correct me if I'm wrong, really address number one, the policy of the process, and then two, the ranking or scoring. So when you look at it from a very simplified angle like that, the process itself was modified to state exactly how things will happen and who will be involved, as well as a mechanical, to use your term, Mr. Lapp, scoring matrix for any tax abatement deal that comes about. And the reason why I point those two out and try to simplify it is that I know that when we had Project Trentino come in front of you, and this is almost deja vu, I was standing right here a couple of months ago and I said, I don't want to fault or poke holes in a prior policy, but I will say this, that if you, the board, are asking us for a return on investment, there's not a process, nor is there a mechanical vehicle in place for us to return that to you accurately. And I think that we've addressed that with this policy, and the easiest way to do it is to think of any potential deal that you can think of. It's almost like a math problem. Throw it at the matrix and see what happens. To me, I think iteration after iteration after iteration, when we finally came to the last version of it, that's simply what we did, the three of us, was come up with a potential scenario where we thought this would be a deal that could come to Henry County. We threw it against the matrix that we created, and I would say with fair accuracy, almost 10 times out of 10 for simple numbers, it did work. So that being said, I'm really just kind of building on what Mr. Chapman said. I'm actually very excited about this. I think on paper it's, 10 or 12 pages and an Excel spreadsheet. It might not look like much, but there's a lot of man hours in this, and I stand behind it firmly.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Not right now. Any questions from anyone at the moment? We might have as we go further.
Yeah,
Okay.
later.
Okay. Attorney Lapp, do you have anything to add?
Well, no, I nothing as far as the overview. I agree with everything both of them just said. So, I mean, I can answer specific questions or walk through specific parts of it, however you want to proceed.
All right. Any specific questions before we dig in and give our opinions and stabs? Okay. I would like to say that I agree. I said a handful of years back that I thought we needed a rubricated type that took out the quasi decisions that were being made, and I think that it puts whoever the EDC leadership happens to be, in this case Mr. Kettler, nothing but love and respect for what he does, but I don't think he should be put in a situation where he's having to negotiate a deal for us. This takes that out of it. It's a simple put the numeric values in the correct places and let's see what type of ad valorem abatement they're willing, we're able to do. I like the fact that it still protects the interest of the county. Is it perfect? I really like what's here today, but I think that it also gives us the leverage to change as we move forward without really having to go back to ground zero and start over again. So I really like what you have fleshed out, and I think that it's a good tool and a good starting point, and hopefully we can bring some business into it and learn from what we do. Any other comments?
Anyway, when they come in to you, okay, so they have to prove themselves before they get the abatement. Like if you say there's 25 jobs, okay, if they bring 18, then what happens?
There's absolutely a mechanism in place that they have to adhere to what it is they commit to.
So we're not out anything if they don't get a fresh up, if they don't get 25.
That's correct.
Well, ultimately, we'd be out nothing. I mean, we don't know if they're going to deliver the jobs until they actually get underway. So
That's what I mean. You don't know.
So there's evaluation that goes into it, you know, that the vetting, if you will, of the firm, and you've got, even though the matrix itself is mechanical and math, you do have a review committee that we're creating that would be the vetting, if you will. And it wouldn't just be on the EDC director or the administrator to say, well, I think this business is viable. You'd have 5 people in the community who have some expertise in business development who would be saying, I think this business is viable. And so you'd have that assurance, reasonable assurance. Nobody can have guarantees, you know,
Right.
predicting. But then, once they get underway and they start getting the abatements, they have to prove that they got the jobs there that they said they would. And they actually get the abatement, you know, their taxes are reduced, but if they don't deliver, then they're subject to having to disgorge, you know, to give us a refund of the abatement. So that's how.
They'd have to repay the rebate,
Right.
because they might take it and say 25, and when they get started, they come to look and say, well, no, really, we should have said 15, because 25 is too high.
Right.
But Mr. Lapp, if you want to chime in here, I think this was a really good realization for us when we got into I look at it 2 ways. I think there's no doubt this is a performance-based incentive, meaning nothing is ever given until performance is proven.
Right.
In the case that performance is not, you know, achieved, I think the older policy, it was somewhat gray as to how the county could handle. You know, they had, again, I defer to you, Mr. Lapp, for what.
There was no policy.
It was all quasi made up as we went.
So now there is a definitive piece of language in there that gives us the ability to look at that and, I guess, number one, renegotiate, because at the end of the day, we want them to succeed. And number two, if it's pretty apparent that they're not going to exceed, it gives us the leverage to put the clamp down and say, bye-bye. This is not worth our time.
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know if you recall, but I mean, when we asked you this question a few months back, you very nicely said you don't have any tools in the toolbox, and I'm ad-libbing what you said, but you know, there wasn't the ability for us to have a matrix and what we wanted to do, and the ability to go back and assess. And I know that's something that you and I've talked about on a number of occasions, Ms. Papinall. To Commissioner Harris's comment, the company's established or told us they're going to establish 25 jobs. They end up hitting the mark at 18. There's just a reduction in the abatement that occurs, correct? It's not an all or nothing.
If I understand correctly, and again, help me out here, that's the beauty of the scoring matrix, is we would go back to what the points were allocated for that business.
Okay.
If they didn't hit 25, which at 25 jobs they would have been allocated
X.
score X.
Yes.
So now they're in a different tier, a lower tier.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, it would relate directly to what the abatement should be for 18 versus 25.
Yeah, so you might go back to 15.
Correct. Same thing.
15
It
up.
would be it would be renegotiated. The exemption would
Absolutely.
be renegotiated. You do a new ordinance based upon what they've
What they
gone
actually
through
did.
with.
Yes, sir.
Now, they may have already got last year the abatement based upon 25 jobs, which was, let's say, 40% abatement. Let's take the numbers for discussion.
We got
They got 40% abatement last year because we thought they had 25 jobs, so they only had 18. And you do the math on that, and that shows that they're only entitled to a 30% abatement, let's just say. You know, so they got more of an abatement than they should have. So it would be a negotiated number. We may end up saying it's 25 going forward to account for the fact that they got over exempted
Absolutely.
last year and
Make up.
projected forward it's 25, something like that.
But either way, we're going to have a tool in the toolbox that did not exist before that allows us to have an assessment mechanism that we didn't have also, Mr. Chair.
And I think that it's probably noteworthy, and I don't want to, everyone reads probably better than I do, but I think it is noteworthy and very important to point out, and for everyone who didn't get the opportunity to read, you know, the literature that we have in front of us with the write-up, it is only for the TPP improvements or additions that we made to the property. Is that correct?
Improvements to real property.
That's right. And so as we give an abatement, we're not giving away the value that we were already currently getting. We would still be getting money, and probably more so because we would be going from ag to industrial or something of that nature, but only those real improvements. And so it's not like we're giving value away.
Everything's based on full-time.
That's correct.
Let me ask you another question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Was the number $250,000, where did y'all arrive at that, of just being the baseline investment?
for
Capital
the
expenditures. Yes, sir.
capital investment.
Yeah.
Basically what I did was, we monkeyed with this number a little bit, is what's realistic based off of the current footprint of industry and businesses here. So if you look at the revenue of the businesses here, and I can provide a table of what the breakdown is, what is realistic in comparison to what's already here. For example, the Project Trentino. If you look at Trentino, they had a $25 million capital investment, and that was at 40 jobs or 39 jobs. So if you break that down, I don't know off the top of my head what the math is, but that's about 3 times what the average capital investment per employee typically is. You can look for a reference, you can look at the Hertz deal. I believe their capital investment was north of 60, right around 66 million, and that was for 736 employees. So there typically is kind of a sliding scale of what the capital investment typically aligns with the number of employees that comes in. Now again, that can deviate by business, but what the quick answer is, Commissioner Turner, to your question, is that there is a pretty standard ratio of the number of employees per the industry that aligns with Henry County in comparison to what's already here, meaning what complements it or what would come logically. And we brought the number down. I think the original number, and correct me if I'm wrong, was north of $1 million, right?
Well, it was 1 million, yeah. It was exactly 1 million.
We wanted to make it achievable.
But the board, the last time we were in front of you on this was January 2015. He wasn't here then, so he doesn't have that knowledge, but he and I were, and it was 1 million, and my notes from our meeting says make the base 250,000. One of you said that, or some of you said that, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I remember being on that train of make it 250,000, and I was even thinking of less because obviously we know that business retention and expansion is the number one catalyst. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
To economic development. And, just looking at trying to encourage, a shop. I always go back to the direct industrial example or, the Brian Beer example, Mr. Beer coming before us and allowing them to have a justification for your office and being on the team of the economic development office and wanting to see, us be successful as a county and encouraging. I think that this is a great start. I think this is a much better tool than what we had, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place also to point out that, I've been approached since Mr. Beer, and I believe it was the LaBelle Chamber, made comment back in November, and it's important to point out that the state statute does limit what types of businesses are eligible for this abatement. And let's just level set here. It's still the same. It's a state statute. And that being said, none of that has changed. None of this is going to change that. But at the same time, what people need to realize, and I mean this in the most sincere sense, is that by enabling the businesses that are target industries per the state statute to achieve success through an abatement, you're indirectly helping the businesses. And I know that's somewhat not data supported or a little bit philosophical or fluffy in sense, but if you let's use Trentino. Trentino is an example. What's happened over the course of the last several weeks? They have started to work on their building, and those are local businesses that are working on that building. Absolutely. These are local businesses that these individual workers are spending money at. I mean, there is an indirect impact to existing businesses that may or may not qualify per the target industry statute issued by the state.
But wow, what an effect it has on your economy.
Oh yeah. Huge ripple effect.
Yeah.
That you can't argue.
That's right.
Well, that being said, there's part of that it is a tool in the toolbox, but I don't think obviously the land is a lot cheaper here for businesses to come in than the coast. So they're already getting a little nudge there. But keep in mind, when we give these abatements, these people come in, first thing you hear is it's going to be a revenue boost, it's going to be jobs. But the fact is also, it's going to be a strain on schools, it's going to be a strain on the EMS, fire, police. So as you look at this abatement, we need to keep in mind there is going to be a negative effect as well as a positive. So I think the tool is amazing, and it's a good idea, but I don't think we should lure everybody in here by saying, hey, we'll give you an abatement, and because what it's going to do is, and you know what, it is for the last couple of weeks, okay, it's amazing. Let's see the stability. Let's see where it stays. Because we've had those industries come in. They've looked amazing on paper. They started off great, and all of a sudden, we're in a quandary over what are we going to do to fix this. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying I don't think this should be a tool that we wave and say, hey, you're already going to get the land cheaper. but we'd be willing to give you an abatement to come here as well. Because you have to look at the negative as well as you do the positive. And then coming up budget time, you guys know that it's a shortfall, so.
Smart
Just
growth.
gotta keep that in, smart growth,
Smart
absolutely.
growth, and you're 100% correct. I'm already having panic attacks over if they are at all near target for what they say the Everglades project will bring, where we're going to house them, where those kids going to go to school, and we want them here, and so we have to be cognizant of that as we move forward in every arena.
Yes, sir. And the thing right now is, just use schools for an example. There's teachers that live here, that live in Fort Myers and drive to Clewiston to work, because there is no housing, affordable housing. And what you consider affordable housing, once again, comes into play, because I was sitting in a meeting in Fort Myers, and affordable housing there was $1,800 a month.
Yeah.
That's not affordable housing.
Yeah.
The one that's going to get big there is your developer, your contractors. They're going to do well, but as far as the local person, it's going to have a negative effect. So
Right.
everything we bring in, we have to understand there has to be infrastructure. So we've got to look at that both ways.
Exactly. Totally agree.
I think it's a good point too, and I agree 100%. I don't want to lead with this. However, I think of this as, you keep going back to tool in the toolbox, we would lose to Glades County, we would lose to Highlands County, we would lose to any other neighboring rural county should a deal come in and they have a tax abatement policy and we don't. It's more of a preventative measure, in my opinion, than it is a lead incentive, if that makes sense. And just for the record, I agree 110%. It's almost a good problem to have, and then if a business comes in that we have to start worrying about,
Right.
all of the services that are provided. But this abatement doesn't touch the tax dollars that do go to schools and services.
No,
that we
that's
provide.
right. That's
So,
No, but it's just still, in essence, it will still affect those.
absolutely.
So that's to keep in mind as well. So.
Because those costs got to be rendered,
That's right.
That's right.
and they're borne by somebody.
Yep.
That's right.
Great point.
Yep. Absolutely.
But we need that.
Any further questions, Commissioner Bird?
No.
Okay.
Something else to point out as far as local competitiveness, because one thing that I think all three of us tried to be sensitive to was not only the dollar threshold for capital investment, but also the relative average annual wage. What is that threshold wage to qualify for this program? Prior iterations of this policy, it said 120%, 130%. You'll see other competitive models in other counties that said 115%. We looked at starting point values within this matrix at 110%. There's a lot of science and research that goes into what is that number, what does that mean, and how does that start to affect the local economy. Why do we pick 110%? Because as you get to that 110, 120% envelope is when you start to see discretionary income begin to build, where folks begin to make reinvestments, where they begin to have more of a recreational output. You start seeing more of an economic impact. I think Brent and I have had this conversation on several times. What is that number? What is that magical salary? We happen to know what that number is. Is that achievable for our local businesses to get to that number? Probably not today, but as the economy rebounds and as the economy grows, we will probably see that. I want to say that number was somewhere north of 40,000 a year, and we're
36.7 is the 100% threshold, so north of that would be around 40.
So those are the type of, and just to put a number on it so you can see what kind of jobs we're looking at, it's that $40,000 a year and up number that we're targeting because of that echo investment within the economy.
Okay. All right. Is everyone comfortable moving forward with a motion to adopt?
Well, you can't take a motion today. This
Can I?
is for us to discuss.
Well, can't take it before 5 o'clock. You could.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay, then let's, does any reason, does anybody see any reason we should not adopt at 5 for when we're into that?
No.
No? Okay.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, just to read the options out, there's a couple things that we do need to do. Is to approve staff to move forward as drafted to see board adoption. If you choose to do that at the following meeting, that's completely up to the discretion of the board.
Okay.
But we do need to address the fact that we do have a very real expiration date on the
Okay.
current program.
All right.
And you have
Let's,
scheduled another 30-some odd minutes to discuss about whether or not you want to do a special election, couple
Okay.
it up with the primary. Knowing that leaves you to an 8-month envelope, if you wait for the primary.
No, I just want to wait till the primary. Everybody else does too. We ain't gonna spend no money on a special
yeah.
election.
What's the downside of that? We would go 8 months and not have the tool?
Yeah,
We've only had one tax abatement come to us, I think, in the last year, and that was Project Trentino.
Yeah.
we've had 3 in 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Pretty safe.
And we're 1 for 3 if Trentino comes through.
I'm not gonna persuade you one way or the other. My recommendation would be wait for the primary.
Okay.
But again, it's the will of the board.
He wasn't saying that until I said it.
Yeah, right, right. He wanted to wait,
He
yeah.
wanted to wait.
Yeah, see,
That's what you guys
Our
wanna
luck.
do.
Our luck, and I guess this would be a good problem. The AIA project would happen, everything would be finalized and done, and we'd have 400 businesses next, June of next year.
Those are
But
first world problems that we will deal with.
Exactly right. Bring
whenever
it.
happens.
bring them.
And in all sincerity, within the process of it, it would, to use your analogy, it could happen in June of next year. By the time we get to that decision
Right.
point,
We're August. It'd take that long to get the paperwork done anyway.
likely to pass.
That's right.
Referendum. I've never seen anything that's a tax abatement that doesn't pass.
Yeah.
On a referendum.
Is there anyone on the board like to discuss or have a negative reason that we would not wait until the primary election of next year to do it?
No, that's the best thing.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just spend the money,
Okay.
we don't have to.
Okay. Very good.
But the county's biggest downfall now is housing.
I agree. Well,
Anywhere I can go, post office, Winn-Dixie, Walmart, we don't have no place to stay.
Yep.
We're living in Lehigh or somewhere,
I totally-
anywhere but here.
I
Well,
totally
that
agree.
market's got just crazy. You gotta have, like, we were talking the other day, you have a $40,000 house and they're wanting 120 for it.
Yeah,
So things are so out of whack right now, and, like I said a while ago, affordable housing really isn't affordable housing.
Yeah,
we
The
need-
cheapest you can find in LaBelle is $1,200, and
Uh,
you're not getting much for that.
I
You
would.
don't have the income to support that type of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
those apartments, they build in LaBelle, 1,000 and 1,200. He built them, opened them up, and they was all gone just like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they can afford it.
How
I-
many units was it?
You know how many-
I don't know. Man, it was 30, 40, something like that. And
That's all they could get on a piece of land.
Yeah.
But,
I really feel like
they're
it-
paying-
to that, I do believe that we need to come up with some sort of plan to come up with this, to bring some players to the table that's got land and bring the right people that's got the propensity that wants to do it and move forward. Because part of the problem is they're just not available. And so when they're not available, you can
That's right.
charge $120,000 for a $40,000 house.
Exactly.
I don't know if this is the right forum for this discussion, but, the EDC board meets tomorrow, and one of the things I plan on bringing up as part of the agenda is there needs to be a task force of the EDC standing behind essential workforce housing, not affordable housing, essential workforce
Right.
housing.
Exactly.
And, it does have to involve local builders, it has to involve
And I think we're
real
gonna
estate
get,
Yep.
professionals, the people that come together that
That's
can
right.
make that happen.
I think we're gonna have some players that, wants to work with the school board and county on building houses for school teachers, deputies, and people like that.
I think that'd be great. I hope
Try
that
to keep 'em.
as a board, I hope that we can come together and support them and move the process forward and make it as affordable so that they can hopefully pass that along.
If we're gonna have the conversation, I would love to make sure that we include the Henry County Housing Authority in the discussion, whose focus has been primarily on farm worker housing since its existence. I don't know what their board's perception is on diversifying their approach to housing solutions within the county. I do know we've reached out a couple of times. They have said that their bread and butter is farm worker housing, but let's face it, the economy of Henry County is shifting. It is changing. All you have to do is look at the Department of Citrus numbers to begin to realize some of that. I think if the EDC does stand up their task force, we do need to get our SHIP and our HUD housing group together as well as the Housing Authority.
Don't they give us an annual report?
They do, and it's been mostly centered on farm worker housing, Green Tree in particular.
The last year when they gave the report, I asked them, would they be, help us engage in this? And they looked at me like I had 6 heads.
Green Tree, they don't even pay taxes, do they?
We need to have some type of rent control, even if they do have the housing in. If there's no type of control, then, like you said, the income, but you can't afford the housing. So if we have some type of rent control, that would, level it out. So, I'm not sure how we would bring that in, but it needs to be some type of rent control.
There's several other aspects to this as well, including deficient tax rolls. If you're looking at properties that were sitting vacant, it's because the owner stopped paying taxes on it. Now it's piled up liens, it's piled up back taxes, it's piled up interest rate on top of it. I'm referring to Banyan Village, just to be very clear. Where you now have a $3,000, $4,000 lot, half acre lot, or a quarter acre lot, that's now being, with all of the liabilities with it, it's close to $12,000 to $15,000 for something that it's not worth. And so who's going to invest in that? So we've got to tackle that particular equation and look at all legal means, which there aren't very many, to be able to forgive all of those things and look forward to have a clean piece of property for our investment. So
We gotta find a way to put them back on the tax roll.
my point exactly, Commissioner, is what tools are in our toolkit to not continue to beat that pun up all day long, to be able to get those properties back into private holdings where we can right set the market with the right amount of supply and demand and hopefully get the affordable housing index up.
Well, hold on now, Mr. Chair. Well, the situation that Henry County is experiencing isn't unique to Henry County.
It is not.
You go to Broward County or Miami-Dade, and they're talking about they need to develop affordable housing for their teachers and their lay work people. The difference in us in Henry and Miami-Dade and Broward is they got a wee bit more of a financial prowess to do that with. It sounds great, finding a whole number of properties, seeing how close they are together from a proximity standpoint. How do we wipe the slate clean and then put them out there on the market for Sullivan Contracting, whoever to deal with? The problem I have with that is, we're getting dangerously close to engaging in the capital market and private enterprise and not letting the market set itself straight. And then so how do you balance that with, Carson? Well, I don't, but the landlord person who's bought 10 properties, has suffered through all of the economic downturn, has done the right things, paid his taxes, kept people in their homes, kept his properties up to snuff with regards to code violations, living everything in proper code and a safe environment, and now we're going to turn right back around and offer up 35 properties to whoever and say, come in here and build affordable housing. That really starts to...
Well, then they'll move from him out there.
That's exactly right. And we're going to create an imbalance to the market, and we have to be cognizant of that. So I'm not saying I'm anti any of these conversations. I'm just saying that I get extremely cautious and want to put the brakes on whenever I hear we need to engage into the private market, and especially as it relates to an issue that's not unique to us. Workforce issues aren't unique to Hendry. Able work body isn't unique to Hendry. Affordable housing isn't unique to Henry. We have some issues that are, but none of them that we've really talked about today. One question I wanted to ask, and it's not off subject, but it is a little bit. Let's just say we have a property or 2 or 6 that they haven't paid their taxes in forever, and yet they're charging people rent to live there. Is there a way that the county intercedes on that? Is that illegal? What is that? How does that work? And
Can you say that again?
okay, so you own a single family home, and you haven't paid your taxes in ever, really, and it's going to be sold on the courthouse steps, but yet they're charging people rent. They're getting paid, but nobody else is receiving their benefit. How does that work? And once again, I know I'm treading into.
As I say, doesn't the lender typically pay the delinquent taxes while it's...
What if there's not a lender?
Yeah, what if there is no mortgage on it?
That would be...
It's tax certificates.
So you just got to buy the tax certificates and
Well,
Boot 'em
we've
out.
had plenty of times when we went through a tax certificate thing and the peoples came and said, look, we pay this man rent.
so
There's nothing I can do about it.
So reality is that if there was an educational process, they could be purchasing said tax certificates and possibly getting into that property. And
If they apply
Okay.
for tax certificates, they could purchase them and then.
well, it all goes back, Ms. Butler. It all goes back to what I'm wanting to know. To your point, Charles, where you told me today that we have some properties out at Banyan Village that have, they have $15,000 in liens against them, right? And the property's worth X. And anyone that's in their right business mind is not going to acquire that property and try to put anything on it to get a return back because the ROI simply doesn't make sense. But I can take my narrow tail down Hookers Point Road, and I can show you 3 houses that have sold for over $100,000. And I tried everything under the sun to justify giving the people $65,000 for them. But I can't make it make sense financially. But I'm thinking from a mindset of a single family is going to move in there, or maybe 2 teachers are going to move in there, and I'm going to be able to charge somebody $800 a month. Well, that's not what's happening. What's happening is such and such is buying said home. He doesn't even care what the number is. Tell him it's $200,000. It doesn't matter. He strokes the check, and then he moves 13 different humans in there on a weekly basis into the home. In the Ted shed, he moves 2 in, and then he puts an RV in the yard, and he moves 5 into there. And he charges every one of them $100 a month or $100 a week. Cash money. It makes complete financial sense to do that. To your point, Commissioner Wills, we're paying for fire when it happens. We're paying for trash when it gets stacked on the side of the road. We're paying for emergency room general practitioner office, so on and so forth. And I don't know how we get a handle on all that. There's affordable housing out there. It's just what level of standard of living do you want to be in?
I think the key is education and awareness to the individual buyers in Henry County on how to improve their credit.
You said that way too fast,
Sorry.
but I agree with you.
You heard me. No, so there's a small fraction of people that actually can afford to come in and buy speculative properties like that. Therefore, that continues to happen because it's such a small fraction of individuals that can do that. They control the market. 100%. So to me, and it would be if not the key or pinnacle initiative of a task force, is to help understand or help educate buyers in Henry County how to improve their credit or credit worthiness so that they actually can bleed into the market and be a potential buyer. That's the problem, in my opinion. I mean, I don't have the data right now to spout off and support it, but I guarantee you it's 90% of the buyers right now are the spec investors that have the capital and the credit worthiness to do this, or the cash, and it's a lack of credit worthy borrowers or buyers in Henry County, which is why it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think that's a large piece of the puzzle. I think another piece of the puzzle is that we have a large percentage of our population, and over half of our population that I don't know if they're transient or what the actual phrase is, but they're moving with the work. This isn't just a migrant worker issue either. When I say they're moving with the work, they're moving with the C-139 build out. They're moving with the 277, 276 with Corps of Engineers, the Culvert 3 replacement. And so they don't have a problem necessarily living in a substandard living situation for a time certain, knowing that they're making X number of dollars and it's a betterment towards their family. Just they're going to grind it out until. And I think you say a task force. I think that you need to revisit, Charles. I know you've reached out to the city of Clewiston. I know you reached out to the city of LaBelle, and I think that the realtors maybe they kind of took our first stab at it a little bit. I don't know if it was offensive or with a lot of skepticism, but we've got to get everyone to get on board with this discussion about knowing what the market can handle and knowing that the county and the cities are both in it with them on trying to control the standard of living, the standard of homes that people are living in, and then not accepting, the Executive Royal Inn to have, 7 people living in one room for $35 a night, and we don't know how that's all being monitored. And Margaret English can have 13 code enforcement officers walking the streets of Hookers Point, Felda, Flaghole, you name it, to deal with everything. But if we're stacking them in on Main Street 27, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna defeat this animal. And if you're stacking them behind the RV park behind Sunrise, once again, or you go to Fairgrounds, or you go to Twin Lakes, you're not gonna fix it. So it's a systemic problem. It's unfortunately becoming a generational problem because we're getting into years of this same behavior happening. And I don't think it's a lot of players. I do think you're right. It's not a lot of players that are out there that are running this show, but I don't necessarily know who they are. And it's gonna take boots on the ground to help us. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I'll get back on.
That's a good one. That's a good one that we don't need to keep just talking about and not moving on. And it's on every single level. I can tell you, I can vouch for the fact that I know of a school teacher that lived in an RV this school year. We're Scott hiring teachers. They're accepting a job, call them back a week and a half later saying, I can't afford to live within a 40-mile perimeter radius of you, and can't find anywhere there. So it's killing us. It's hurting.
They're doing the same thing in Immokalee.
That's right. So
They need 40 teachers right now in middle school in Immokalee.
So we need to work hard to be proactive to figure it out with every partner at the table, with the resources we have, with the resources the schools have, with the realtors, with the construction folks, everyone.
but it looks like with the responses that I received from each of you that we will have time at 4 o'clock on July 11th, the Tuesday, that's before we have our regular scheduled board meeting in LaBelle, to have the workshop on the rental inspection program, and I believe the magistrate is also on that. I don't know if Ms. English wants to say anything about those two things, but that's just to bring those two ends to the surface. Get your input on what those policies look like, because it is going to have a very real impact, potentially positively politically, more likely negatively politically. There's going to be a lot of people upset with us going and saying, this is not kosher anymore. This is what the code says, and you need to do it for the right reasons and the right time and for the right people. So,
It comes to more of a quality rather than quantity.
Right.
Like we were talking, and Carson's 100% right there. I agree with that. But that also goes back to what I was saying just a few minutes earlier. We really don't need to focus on the quantity as much as we do the quality, because the fact is, when someone wants to move to an area, two things they check. They check what's the crime rate and how good are the schools. That's the first thing they check. They want to know they're putting their children in a safe place and in a place where they're going to get a good education. So if we go back to, like you said, focusing on quality rather than quantity, let's get what we have, make it the best it can be. And if we focus on that, eventually the quantity will come, but we'll also be able to handle the infrastructures that go along as well.
Even with going in and doing that, if you was to make it happen, they're going to move from point A to point B if we don't give them a standard place to live. So we're just going to move them out of one housing to another one. So if we're going to do that, we have to make sure that there's structure there for them to have a place to go, because all they're going to do is move from one end of town to the other if we don't give them a place to go. So
It's okay to allow public input. Mr. Patala, would you like to step forward and speak, please? If you promise to be nice.
He's got his tape on.
Oh, he stopped. He stopped for a minute and hesitated. Did you see that?
It's not that difficult to start picking up points of a development program that over 17 years has not had a single win, really. Almost nothing to justify it. But one thing you guys haven't mentioned, and you're all talking basic, good questions, why hasn't the Economic Development Council gone through all those things for you? It's not really your job to try, because you're not that good at it. You're pretty good, and you're very concerned. But that's their job. You got an Economic Development Council that's responsible for a big goose egg of a record. And they should have thought through all these, in the role of the private sector versus the public responsibility, and how all that stuff is their job. That's all I want. I think you should give them some directive about how you would like this ship to be steered. That's all.
Thank you. Will you be at that meeting tomorrow? You see me?
Yes, sir, I will.
Good.
And I think too, I usually don't respond, but I will say this, I think that too, the Economic Development Council,
Hey, Ms. White.
and it's not a defense at all, but a statement rather of, I think that we were focused a lot on a marketing arm, if you will, and, we don't necessarily have palm trees, we got cypress trees and lakefront and all that stuff, and I don't think we're doing that quite as much now. I think that we're focusing on, trying to build an allegiance with the adult school, trying to make sure that workforce development in Southwest Florida is actually anteing up, building a bridge with some other resources that we haven't necessarily exercised to the full benefit that would benefit Hendry and Glades. And I think that we're moving that ball down the field. Obviously, it can be tremendously better. I think that the model that we have right now is not sustainable. And I don't think anyone can argue in how the years of existence, if there's been a lot of victories, I don't know where they are. There's been a lot of meeting, a lot of energy, a lot of money spent, but not a ton of victories. Now everything's measured in incremental steps, but there's always room for market improvement, and I think that we're stepping in the right direction. So.
I agree. With regards to our workshop, is there any further comments with either the adoption or waiting to adopt this in August of next year? Any further comments?
Respond to that.
Sure, absolutely.
Sit here and be quiet.
No, yeah.
Not respond to that, so.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not, I know this is somewhat non-traditional in the sense that this is a workshop and not, but, fair comment. I don't have any objection to what was said, and At the same time, I don't want to stand here and say, shame on you for not holding our organization more accountable, but at the same time, I've been here for 1 year. I wasn't here for the prior 16. And, I'm not trying to stand here. I've actually been faulted for not talking about what I have done for the last year. So I think this is the perfect segue to talk about what I have done. And the one thing that I have done that no one's done in the prior 16 years was stand up and bring the individual nodes in this community together to achieve some of the things that were talked about tonight. So are we there yet? Absolutely not. But the key to this and my organization and you leveraging, the board leveraging our organization, is understanding what organizations are not participating with the EDC at this point. I think most of them are. I think that's sort of been the task of the prior year. So the only follow-up comment I would make to that is I am in full support, and I can speak on behalf of the Economic Development Council in that we will listen to whatever it is you want us to do. But at the same time, the quid pro quo, what we would ask, and I think ask as a side to that is if there are organizations that are trying to either duplicate what we're doing or aren't going to work with us, I would love to use you as a partner to say, look, this is the Economic Development Council. This is the county level economic development group. If you're not working with them or if you're working against them, then you're actually doing us a disservice. So the partnership I see with us, and I'm willing to take whatever direction and accountability and measures you want, just as long as you help us. Is that a fair statement to make?
It is.
Oh, absolutely.
It is.
Okay.
Until you disprove yourself, you know. And you've done nothing in the time that you've been here, in my opinion, and I've heard nothing in our community that would lead me to think otherwise, that you aren't working on behalf of Henry County's betterment to move us into a new era. And you've shared with me on a number of occasions that it's a long-term solution. There is no magic pill, And if you really break down what you do, it ain't sexy. But that's what the problem is everybody wants it to be about, ribbon cuttings and 300 job announcements and bionitrogen and
Governor flying in.
doves being released and, all these other things. And that ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen.
The key is really to identify, I think there are a couple different things that a couple different organizations are good at. They should do it, but they should work together instead of trying to all do the same thing. And I think, and I will own this, I think this is a good topic of discussion tomorrow for the EDC board is what are those things that we do best? How can you measure it? And then come back to you and talk about what is it that you expect. That way, I spend the majority of my time fielding people's opinions that we don't do anything, which I'm a big boy, I can do that. But at the same time, give me a measurement, put a stick in the sand. Tell me what it is you want to see, and I'll do it.
And
If I might just real quick, and I don't want this to be like an affirmation, but I do think Brenda's doing a good job. I'll leave it there at that point. But I will say is that the conversation over the last year has been both rewarding, but it's also been a little bit offensive. And that we've had to come to grips with some of the reality of what our statistics are. There's a very real perception that we're doing better than what we are amongst certain decision makers, and I think we need to fight that with data. I think we need to look at what our numbers are. I think we need to embrace that. I don't think we're going to be agents of change and solve this problem unless we look at the negative aspects of it. It's a yin and yang conversation. I think we're now at a point where some hard decisions were made. Bylaws had to be improved. Makeups of different boards had to be changed to be able to get things to where we have a climate now where we can have those hard conversations, but it's not over. And you have a commitment, at least from my office, working with the executive office at the EDC, that we're not going to shy away from those tough conversations, but it's going to take some people getting offended and making some tough choices to make this needle move. Otherwise, just hang on, it'll be status quo forever. But we're going to have to hop into those hard conversations.
And to go back to kind of surmise what was going on, and to Mr. Patala's point, if the ribbon cuttings and the big businesses is what you expect, that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough one for I don't care who was filling the shoes and standing behind the podium. But I will tell you that, and Mr. Cutler is spot on. You just don't see what he does do. I'm one of the ones that he drags around the county to these businesses. I'm the one that comes out cut up and stabbed and punched in the face because the school system wasn't providing adequate services. Some of the services we're providing were less than par. But I can tell you that as a result of that, we have improved the services. We have students getting hired. We have high school students that are accepting jobs today as welders for starting salary of $41,000 coming out of Clewiston High School because of what Mr. Kettler brought to the table with some local businesses and training. So there's things that just are not seen there. And so it is happening. Recently, through the hard work of Mr. Kettler, the school system received a very nice grant to upgrade social media outreach so that we can do a better job of telling the story of what our school system does, so that when people decide to move here or not, it's there, the wins are there. And so these are things that's happening behind the scenes that it is not publicized and put out there for people to see. But the EDC, has some unbelievable value. And what are we going to do? Not support it and not compete and not do it? We have to do it. We have to continue moving forward and put that stick in the sand and continue working together as a cohort in every one possible, and not in silos on our board or in silos in the building across the parking lot from our headquarters there. So I think we are moving in a good direction. So
I appreciate that, and again, I have to go back. I appreciate the comment, Raul, because I think the year-plus work that we've done, we're now at the point where we can actually step back and say, okay, now we know we've made the changes, we've got the right people in place. How do you measure our success? What are we good at? What's expected of us? And if we can't do it, I can't do it. So what are the measurements? We are a collaborative entity. Our role as the Economic Development Council, which I don't believe this has been the role of the Economic Development Council prior to me, is to bring individual local entities and regional entities together to help achieve the goals of housing, of workforce, of you name anything that has to do with the economic prosperity of Embry County. The key thing to point out here is that we aren't able to do everything. And it's a matter of figuring out who can. I'm the first one to hold my hand up and say I can't do everything. Actually, there are very many things I can do very well. Ask my girlfriend. So, that being said, this is the perfect opportunity to identify what we do well and who we need to work with. And I think the outcome at this point, with the progress we have, is to figure out what needs to be measured.
Brett,
I'm open.
How many do y'all have on the board?
We have 29 people on our board right now.
29 that meet how often?
Once a month.
And how do you come up with those 29?
So there was a bylaw revision about 4 months ago, and the makeup of the board was not specified. However, I did an audit of the industrial footprint on the board, and the executive committee, with myself, determined that there was not a big enough small business footprint on the board. I think there were 4 small business owners, and at the time there were only 23 board members. So what we did was we added an additional 6 board members, 5 of which were small business owners. So right now you have almost a third of the EDC board represented by small business owners, which to my research is the first time it's been that balanced since the existence of the EDC.
I was always thinking you needed more business people on that board.
Absolutely,
People that's been successful.
that's what they've done.
And we're now in month 3 of having those individuals on the board, and anybody here that's been to an EDC meeting in the last 3 months, they're different, and it is that presence of small business owners asking different questions, taking things from a different lens that has changed the discussion.
Yeah. Somebody that's went out and started the business, brought it up, worked in it,
Agreed.
rather than somebody that's just been handed to them.
Agreed.
Any further questions? Want some great conversation from EDC. Great feedback. Appreciate everyone. Any further questions regarding the workshop with the adoption of the ad valorem tax abatement?
Commissioner, not towards the workshop so much as the comments that Charles and Brent made. Just, I think that we do need to start having some uncomfortable conversations. There's nothing wrong with being honest with people, especially when it can be supported with data. And we need to use those data sets to really drive us on where our focuses need to be. And especially it relates to the educational entities in Henry County, the county itself, hospital, so on and so forth. All of us working together towards bringing goods and services in an efficient manner as possible. and really turning the needle. Because, you know, you look at Clifton High School, I mean, our graduating classes are actually getting smaller, aren't they?
I think so.
I don't know. I really think we need to start looking at some hard data and assess, are we surviving? Are we thriving? Are we sick? And are we sick with a benign tumor and just a poor diet? Or are we, you know, ingested with malignant cancer all over us and you know, on our way out the door, and we just don't realize it?
LaBelle shouldn't have 400 more high school students in Twister.
And do they?
Yeah, 1250,
LaBelle has 400 more high school students, is that what you said?
400.
No, it's only about 200, 250.
Whether it's 1250 and there were 850 here.
No, it's right at 1,000.
Here?
Well, this is
150,
precisely what I'm talking about. We're talking about, is it 950 or 1250?
250 is over 200 still though.
And the point I'm making is why?
Yeah.
And what is the actual drivers? What is our economic engine other than U.S. Sugar? What attracts people to come to Henry County, and how can we capitalize on those things? We're hearing time and time again that white collar and blue collar workers alike, they're being offered jobs, and they're saying, I can't come because X, Y, and Z. How do we attack those issues? How do we deal with it? I used the example with our county administrator today. I said, Charles, you give us a $500 million. Give us $500 million today. Here it is in a briefcase. Start to build your airport. What are we going to do? And you never hear me talk about the airport. I never bring up the airport. And I was chastised by a number of people in Tallahassee this year. You know, the only reason you're up here asking for money for infrastructure to Everglades is because you think the airport's going to take off. And I say, no. What I'm asking for with regards to Everglades infrastructure is completely irrelevant to whether a jet ever lands or just a Cessna 152 comes in and out of Jason Jacobs' hangar. We need to have pipe in the ground and be moving the ball forward on infrastructure so that development truly can occur in that corridor going outside of the county. Because if you look at Okeechobee County, you look at some of the other places in the heartland, there's some things that are happening that we're not experiencing. We have to ask ourselves, why is that happening? And then what is, you know, what are we doing? And I just go back to my previous profession in college football. You know, every Sunday we had a self-scout session. And we looked at what we called on third and medium and what we called on third and long and why we were bad and why we didn't win. And you just had brutally honest conversations every day. In private business, why did we not make money on that job? Here we are. In government, we don't do that a lot of times, and if we do, we want to dial the conversation back out of hopes of we don't want to offend somebody. Yeah. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I've known him my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, we might have to hurt some feelings, maybe. So that's it.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments? Okay, workshop stands adjourned. Start back at 5.